The gymnasium at Camp Pendleton was thick with the smell of sweat and testosterone, the kind of place where Marines came to prove themselves after deployment rotations. Sergeant Marcus Webb had just finished his third set of deadlifts when he noticed the woman waiting by the squat rack, her frame small against the rows of iron plates. She wore standard PT gear, no rank visible, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Webb didn't recognize her. He didn't care to. The rack was his for another 10 minutes, and the line of guys behind him knew it. "Rack's taken," he said, not looking up. She said nothing, just stood there with her water bottle, eyes scanning the weight setup with a kind of patience that irritated him. Webb added another plate, made sure the clang echoed. Around them, the usual sounds of a military gym continued, metal hitting metal, grunts of exertion, the low hum of trash talk between workout partners. But something about her stillness created a pocket of quiet that Webb found unsettling. "You deaf," he said louder this time. "I said it's taken." "I heard you," she replied. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, Midwestern accent, maybe Iowa or Nebraska. "I'll wait." Webb snorted. He'd been in Ramadi, pulled security through the worst of the insurgency, earned his combat action ribbon the hard way. This base had too many POGs, now personnel other than grunts, people who'd never seen real action cluttering up the facilities. He assumed she was one of them. Admin, maybe, or some kind of specialist who spent her deployment behind a computer. "Long wait," he said. "Got 4 more sets." His spotter, Corporal Diaz, shifted uncomfortably. "Webb, man, just let her work in. She can wait her turn like everyone else." The woman's expression didn't change. If anything, she seemed almost amused, a slight curve at the corner of her mouth that Webb found patronizing. He was about to say something else when she stepped slightly closer, not aggressive, but enough that he could see her eyes clearly. They were gray, the color of storm clouds over the Pacific, and they held something that made his next words die in his throat. "You done?" she asked quietly. Webb felt his face flush. The gym had grown quieter, conversations trailing off as other Marines sensed something happening. He knew he should back down, something in his gut telling him he'd miscalculated. But he'd committed now, and pride was a hell of a thing. "Yeah," he said, pushing into her space. "And who the hell are you?" The gym door opened. A Navy commander walked in, saw the woman, and his face went white. "Captain Reeves," the commander said quickly, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "We weren't expecting you until 1400. The name hit the gym like a flashbang. Captain Eliza Reeves. Everyone knew that name. Everyone. She was the Naval Special Warfare officer who'd coordinated the hostage rescue in Yemen 3 months ago, the one that had saved 17 aid workers from an al-Qaeda cell. She was the woman who'd spent 6 years as a Navy helicopter pilot before cross-training into special operations, who deployed with SEAL teams more times than most SEALs. She was the officer who'd been shot down over Kandahar and walked 12 miles through Taliban territory with a broken ankle to reach friendly lines. She was also, Webb now realized with mounting horror, the senior officer who commanded the entire special warfare training pipeline on the West Coast. She had more operational authority than his battalion commander. She had more combat experience than everyone in this gym combined. Reeves didn't acknowledge the commander right away. She kept her eyes on Webb, that small smile still playing at her lips. The storm gray eyes weren't angry. They were calculating, measuring, seeing right through his posturing to the insecurity underneath. Webb felt himself shrinking under that gaze, all his bravado evaporating like water on hot sand. "Sergeant Webb," she said softly. She knew his name, of course she knew his name. "The rack's yours, I'll come back later." She turned to leave, and that's when Webb's brain caught up with his mouth. He just told a Navy captain, a decorated combat veteran with more time in hell than he had in the court, to wait her turn like some boot fresh out of basic. The implications crashed over him like a wave. This wasn't just embarrassing. This could be career-ending, disrespecting a senior officer, creating a hostile environment. The Corps took that seriously, especially now, especially with officers like Reeves who'd proven themselves 1,000 times over. "Ma'am," he stammered, I mean." Reeves paused at the door, looked back. The gym was absolutely silent now. 30 Marines, all watching, all waiting to see what she'd do. Webb could see his career flashing before his eyes. The promotion to staff sergeant he'd been tracking for, the force recon screening he'd applied for, all of it evaporating because he'd been too proud to share a squat rack. "At ease, Sergeant," Reeves said. "We all have bad days." She left before he could respond. The commander followed her quickly, already pulling out his phone, probably to do damage control. The gym stayed quiet for another 5 seconds, then exploded into conversation. Webb stood there, his hands shaking slightly, aware that everyone was looking at him with a mixture of pity and schadenfreude. Diaz whistled low. "Dude, you just told Captain Reeves to wait in line." "I didn't know," Webb said weakly. "That's Captain fucking Reeves, man. She's got the Navy Cross. She's got 3 Bronze Stars. She once flew a damaged helo through a sandstorm to extract a SEAL team that was about to get overrun." Diaz shook his head. "And you told her to wait her turn." Webb felt sick. He stripped the weights off the bar mechanically, his mind replaying the encounter, seeing it now through different eyes. The way she'd stood there, patient and calm. The way she'd smiled, not mocking him but almost understanding his mistake. The way she'd de-escalated when she could have destroyed him with a single word. Another Marine approached, older, with a salt-and-pepper high-end type. First Sergeant Morrison, one of the combat instructors. Morrison had been in since the first Gulf War, had the kind of presence that made junior Marines stand straighter without realizing it. "Son," Morrison said quietly, "you know why she didn't bury you just now?" Webb shook his head. "Because she's been where you are. She knows what it's like to be underestimated, to have people assume you don't belong. She's had to prove herself every single day since she pinned on butter bars." Morrison picked up a weight plate, set it on the rack with careful precision. "The difference is, she actually did the proving. You just got loud about it." The words stung because they were true. Webb had spent years cultivating his reputation as a hard charger, a devil dog who didn't back down. But reputation wasn't the same as substance, and Reeves had just shown him the difference without saying a word. She'd walked into a hostile situation, faced down his aggression, and left with her dignity intact while his lay in pieces. Morrison continued, "Captain Reeves could have had your stripes, could have had you cleaning latrines until your EAS. Instead, she gave you something more valuable, a lesson. Whether you learn from it is up to you." The first sergeant walked away, leaving Webb alone with his thoughts and the weight of his mistake. Around him, the gym slowly returned to normal, but he could feel the glances, hear the whispered conversations. By tonight, everyone on base would know the story. By tomorrow, it would be legend. The Marine who didn't recognize one of the most decorated special operations officers in the Navy. Webb sat down on the bench, his workout forgotten. He thought about Reeves' eyes, that storm-gray calm. He thought about the patience she'd shown, the grace. And he thought about the fact that she was probably dealing with men like him every single day, men who saw her size, her gender, and made assumptions. Men who didn't bother to look deeper, to see the steel underneath. For the first time in years, Sergeant Marcus Webb felt genuinely ashamed. The story of the gym encounter spread through Camp Pendleton like wildfire, but it didn't reach its full context until the following morning, when Captain Reeves stood at the front of the base's largest briefing room, addressing 400 Marines about to deploy to Africa. Webb was in the third row, trying to make himself invisible. He'd barely slept, had drafted and deleted a dozen apology emails, unsure if reaching out would make things better or worse. Reeves took the podium with the easy confidence of someone who'd given 1,000 briefings. She wore her service dress blues, the ribbons on her chest telling a story of valor that most Marines could only dream about. The Navy Cross sat at the top, its distinctive blue ribbon with white edges immediately recognizable. Below it, 3 bronze stars, 2 with Combat V devices, a Purple Heart, the Afghanistan Campaign Medal with multiple stars, the Iraq Campaign Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal. Each ribbon represented blood, sweat, sacrifice. "Gentlemen," she began, then smiled slightly, "and ladies, I'm Captain Eliza Reeves, and I'm here to talk to you about working with Naval Special Warfare assets during your deployment." Her presentation was masterful. She spoke about integration, about communication protocols, about the importance of mutual respect between conventional and special operations forces. She told stories carefully sanitized for classification about missions where everything had gone right because people had trusted each other, and missions where everything had gone wrong because they hadn't. She made eye contact with her audience, read the room, adjusted her delivery based on their reactions. Webb watched her, fascinated and horrified in equal measure. This was the woman he dismissed as probably admin. This was the officer who spoke 5 languages, who'd spent months embedded with Afghan special forces, who'd personally planned operations that had dismantled terrorist networks across 3 continents, and he'd told her to wait her turn at a squat rack. The briefing ended with questions. A young lieutenant asked about air support coordination. A staff sergeant wanted to know about CASEVAC procedures with SEAL teams. Reeves answered each question with patience and detail, never condescending, always treating even the most basic queries with respect. She was, Webb realized, exactly the kind of leader he aspired to be: competent, humble, secure enough in her abilities that she didn't need to prove anything. When the room cleared, Webb stayed behind. He waited while Reeves packed up her materials, gathering his courage. She saw him standing there and smiled, that same slight curve of the lips that had unnerved him yesterday. "Sergeant Webb," she said, "twice in 2 days, I'm flattered." "Ma'am, I need to apologize." "You already did, yesterday, with your eyes if not your words. Apology accepted." She closed her briefcase with a soft click. "Want to tell me what you were really upset about?" The question caught him off guard. "Ma'am." "That wasn't about a squat rack. That kind of anger comes from somewhere deeper." She leaned against the desk, giving him her full attention. "Talk to me." Webb struggled with the words. "My brother," he finally said. "He was killed in Helmand, IED. He was better than me. Better Marine, better man, and I've been trying to, I don't know, live up to him maybe. Prove I deserve to come home when he didn't." Reeves nodded slowly. "Survivor's guilt is real. I've lost friends too, good people who should still be here." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But being angry all the time, pushing people away, that's not honoring him. That's just hurting yourself." "How do you deal with it?" Webb asked. "The loss." "I fly," Reeves said simply. "That's where I process things. Up there, alone with the sky, everything becomes clear." She studied him for a moment. "What's your thing? What makes you feel centered?" Webb thought about it. "Used to be running before the deployment. Haven't done much of it since. Maybe it's time to start again." Reeves picked up her briefcase. "Listen, Webb, you made a mistake yesterday. You're going to make more mistakes. We all do. What matters is what you do after. Do you learn? Do you grow? Or do you just stay angry?" "I want to learn, ma'am." "Good, then come to my office tomorrow at 0800. Bring your PT gear." She saw his confused expression and smiled. "You want to know who I am? Really know? Then you're going to fly with me." The next morning, Webb arrived at the flight line at Camp Pendleton's airfield precisely on time, his PT gear in a duffel bag, his stomach a knot of anticipation and dread. He'd looked up Reeves' flight history the night before, the official parts anyway. 6 years as an MH-60S Seahawk pilot before transitioning to special operations. Over 3,000 flight hours, half of them combat. She'd been shot down twice, crash-landed once, and had more close calls than anyone wanted to count. Reeves was already there, conducting her pre-flight inspection on a sleek MH-60S. The Seahawk sat on the tarmac like a predator at rest, its rotors still, its gray paint scheme designed to blend with sea and sky. She moved around the aircraft with practiced efficiency, checking control surfaces, examining rotor blades, running her hands along the airframe like a rider checking a trusted horse. "Ever been in a military helicopter, Sergeant?" she called out. "Once, ma'am, training exercise in 29 Palms." "Did you like it?" "Honestly, scared the hell out of me." Reeves laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "Good, fear keeps you sharp. Come here, help me finish the pre-flight." For the next 20 minutes, she walked him through every step of the inspection process, explaining what she was looking for, why each check mattered. Webb found himself relaxing, drawn in by her obvious passion for flying. She talked about the helicopter like it was alive, describing its quirks and personality with the affection of someone discussing an old friend. "This bird has been with me for 4 years," she said, patting the fuselage. "We've been through 3 deployments together. She saved my life more times than I can count, and I like to think I've returned the favor." They climbed aboard. Reeves settled into the pilot's seat, began the startup sequence. Webb strapped into the crew chief's position, the 5-point harness tight across his chest. The rotors began to turn, slowly at first, then faster, the distinctive wop-wop-wop of the Seahawk building to a roar. The aircraft shuddered, lifting slightly on its landing gear, eager to fly. "Tower, Hawk 27 requesting departure to the south, coastal route," Reeves said into her radio, her voice professional and crisp. "Hawk 27 Tower, you're cleared for departure. Winds 280 at 8 knots. Good hunting, Captain." Reeves eased the collective up, and the Seahawk lifted smoothly from the tarmac. Webb felt his stomach drop as the ground fell away, Camp Pendleton spreading out beneath them in a patchwork of brown and green. The Pacific Ocean stretched to the west, endless and blue, while the coastal mountains rose to the east. Reeves banked south, keeping low, the helicopter skimming over training ranges and impact areas. "This is where I think," she said over the intercom. "Up here everything else falls away. It's just me and the machine and the air, pure presence." Webb watched her hands on the controls, the constant subtle adjustments that kept the aircraft stable. There was an artistry to it, a kind of meditation in motion. He understood now why she'd brought him up here. This wasn't about showing off her skills or impressing him with aerobatics. This was about sharing something fundamental, showing him the place where she found her peace. They flew south along the coast, past San Clemente, past the restricted waters where seals trained. Reeves pointed out landmarks, told stories about training missions and close calls, moments of beauty and terror that had shaped her career. She spoke about her first combat mission in Iraq, flying into a hot LZ under fire, the strange clarity that had come over her when the tracers started flying. "Everyone thinks combat is chaos," she said. "And it is, but there's also this crystallization. Everything becomes simple. Either you do your job or people die. There's no room for ego, no time for second-guessing. You just act." "Is that what happened in Yemen?" Webb asked. "The hostage rescue?" Reeves was quiet for a moment, the helicopter's rotors filling the silence. "Yemen was different," she finally said. "That one was personal. One of the hostages was a Navy corpsman I'd served with in Afghanistan. Good man, great medic. The Al-Qaeda cell that took him. They weren't interested in ransom. They wanted propaganda." She banked the helicopter, heading inland now toward the training areas. "We had 72 hours to plan and execute. The intel was shaky, the terrain was terrible, and half the Pentagon thought it was a suicide mission. But we had to try, couldn't leave him there." "What was it like going in?" "Terrifying. We flew low, nap of the earth, through mountain passes that barely had clearance for our rotors. It was night, no moon, using NVGs. Every second I expected RPG fire, expected us to clip a ridge and crash. But we made it. Inserted the SEAL team 2 clicks from the compound, provided overwatch while they breached." Reeves's voice grew softer, remembering. "The firefight lasted 11 minutes, felt like hours. We took small arms fire, lost our navigation systems, had to fly partial manual. But the team got all 17 hostages out, every single one. She paused. Lost 2 SEALs, though. Good men. The corpsman we went in for, he was already dead when we arrived. They'd executed him the day before. Webb didn't know what to say. The story carried a weight that statistics and medal citations couldn't convey. This was what valor actually looked like, not glory, but grief. Not triumph, but the heavy knowledge that sometimes doing everything right still meant losing people. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said quietly. "Me too, Sergeant, me too." Reeves wiped her eyes quickly, a brief moment of vulnerability, then her voice strengthened. "But that's why we do this. Why we train, why we push ourselves, why we don't quit even when it's hard. Because people depend on us. Because somewhere, someday, the mission will matter and we need to be ready." She brought the helicopter down to 50 feet, skimming over the desert training area, weaving between rock formations with casual precision. Webb's knuckles were white on his harness straps, but he found himself trusting her completely. Every movement was deliberate, every adjustment calculated. She wasn't showing off, she was demonstrating, teaching him without words about competence and commitment. They flew for another hour, Reeves talking about leadership and sacrifice, about the responsibility that came with command. She spoke about the men and women under her authority, the SEAL candidates she oversaw, the weight of knowing that her decisions would shape their futures, possibly determine their survival in combat. She talked about the loneliness of command, the impossibility of being both leader and friend, the necessity of maintaining distance even as you care deeply about your people. Finally, as the sun climbed toward noon, Reeves turned the Seahawk back north toward Camp Pendleton. The flight had been a masterclass in more than just aviation. It had been a window into what real leadership looked like, stripped of ego and pretense. Webb felt changed by it, humbled in a way that had nothing to do with embarrassment and everything to do with genuine respect. As they approached the airfield, Reeves's voice came over the intercom one last time. "You asked who I am, Sergeant Webb. I'm someone who's made mistakes, who's failed and learned and kept going. I'm someone who's afraid every single day but does the job anyway. I'm not special. I'm just stubborn." She smiled, glancing back at him. "And I think you might be too, if you let go of the anger long enough to find out." The Seahawk touched down with barely a bump, Reeves landing so smooth that Webb hardly felt the transition from air to ground. As the rotors wound down and the engine noise faded, he sat in the sudden quiet, processing everything he'd experienced. Reeves completed her shutdown checklist with the same methodical care she'd shown during pre-flight, every switch and gauge given its due attention. When they finally climbed out, Webb's legs were shaky, partly from the flight, partly from emotional exhaustion. Reeves noticed, smiled sympathetically. "Takes everyone that way their first time really flying, not just riding but experiencing it." "Ma'am," Webb said, finding his voice, "thank you for this, for yesterday, for not ending my career when you had every right to." Reeves shouldered her flight bag, squinting in the bright California sun. "You know what I see when I look at you, Webb. I see a Marine who cares too much, who's carrying too much. That's not a weakness, but it becomes one if you let it make you cruel." She started walking toward the hangar. "You've got potential. Don't waste it being angry at the world." Over the following weeks, something shifted in Webb. He started running again, early mornings before PT, pushing himself until his lungs burned and his legs screamed, but his mind finally quieted. He volunteered for extra duties, helped junior Marines with their training, tried to be the kind of leader his brother would have been. The change didn't go unnoticed. First, Sergeant Morrison pulled him aside after a particularly grueling training exercise. "Whatever Captain Reeves said to you, it took. Keep it up, son. This is the Marine I knew you could be." Webb also found himself paying more attention during briefings, especially those involving joint operations with Navy units. He learned about special warfare training pipelines, about the integration of air assets with ground forces, about the complex coordination required for modern military operations. And he learned more about Captain Reeves not from her directly, but from the stories that circulated among those who'd worked with her. A Navy SEAL Master Chief named Rodriguez told him about a mission in Afghanistan where Reeves had flown through a brownout landing to extract a wounded team, her visibility zero, but her determination absolute. A Marine major recalled Reeves staying up for 36 hours straight to plan a compound assault, gaming out every contingency, ensuring maximum chance of success with minimum risk to the assault force. An Army Ranger described Reeves flying air support during a firefight in Syria, her voice calm over the radio as she coordinated strikes while taking ground fire. Every story added another layer to Webb's understanding. This wasn't just a decorated officer. This was someone who'd earned every bit of respect through blood, sweat, and an unwavering commitment to the mission and her people. The Navy Cross citation told part of it, for extraordinary heroism while serving as helicopter pilot during combat operations. But the full story was in the details, in the countless moments of courage that never made it into official records. 3 months later, Webb's battalion deployed to Djibouti for counterterrorism operations in East Africa. It was his second deployment, but it felt like his first. He approached it with fresh eyes, with a humility that hadn't been there before. He led his squad with patience instead of aggression, listened more than he spoke, tried to see his Marines as individuals rather than just instruments of his will. The deployment was relatively quiet at first patrols, training exercises with partner forces, long days of heat and boredom punctuated by brief moments of tension. But in the 4th month, everything changed. A terrorist cell linked to al-Shabaab kidnapped 3 aid workers from a medical clinic in southern Somalia. Intelligence suggested they were being moved toward the Kenyan border, likely for propaganda purposes or execution. The Joint Special Operations Command spun up a rescue package within hours. SEAL Team 7 would execute the ground assault, and their air support commander, coordinating from Djibouti, Captain Eliza Reeves. Webb learned this during a briefing 2 days before the operation. His platoon was tasked with securing the forward operating base where the rescue helicopters would stage. It was supposed to be a simple security mission: establish a perimeter, provide backup power and communications, maintain defensive positions. Standard stuff. But knowing Reeves would be there, would be in the thick of another high-risk mission, added weight to the assignment. The night before the operation, Webb was checking his platoon's defensive positions when he saw a familiar figure walking the flight line. Reeves, conducting yet another pre-flight inspection even though the mission wouldn't launch for 12 hours. He approached hesitantly, not wanting to interrupt but feeling compelled to speak. "Captain Reeves." She turned, surprised, then her face broke into a genuine smile. "Sergeant Webb, didn't expect to see you out here. My platoon's pulling security for the op. Didn't expect to see you either, ma'am." World gets smaller in our line of work. She returned to her inspection, running her hand along a rotor blade, checking for any imperfections. "How's the deployment treating you?" "Good, different than last time. Better, I think." "Because you're different," Reeves said simply. She moved to the next blade, her movements economical and practiced. "That's how it works. Change yourself, change your experience." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the night air warm and thick with humidity. Around them, the fob hummed with activity generators running, vehicles moving, the constant background noise of a military installation that never truly slept. But in their small pocket of the flight line, there was a surprising peace. "Are you scared?" Webb asked suddenly. "About tomorrow?" Reeves looked at him, weighing whether to answer honestly. Finally, she nodded. "Every single time. Anyone who says they're not scared before an op like this is either lying or psychotic." She finished her inspection, made a note on her checklist. "But fear is information. It tells you the stakes matter. The key is not letting it paralyze you. What if something goes wrong? Then we adapt. That's what we're trained for, not perfect execution, but perfect recovery. She picked up her flight bag. Get some sleep, Webb. Tomorrow's going to be intense for all of us. The operation launched at 0300. Webb watched from his position on the FOB perimeter as four MH-60S Seahawks lifted into the pre-dawn darkness, Reeves' aircraft in the lead. They disappeared quickly, running dark, heading toward the Somali border. Then there was nothing to do but wait, monitor the radio frequencies, and maintain security. The waiting was always the worst part. Webb paced his section of the perimeter, checked and rechecked his Marines' positions, tried not to imagine everything that could go wrong. The SEAL team would be inserted 5 kilometers from the target compound, would move in on foot under cover of remaining darkness, would breach simultaneously at multiple points. Reeves and her helicopters would provide overwatch, ready to provide fire support or emergency extraction. On paper, it was a straightforward operation. In reality, everything could go sideways in seconds. The first radio traffic came at 0415. Hawk 1, targets in sight, beginning approach. Reeves' voice calm and professional. Copy, all Hawks assume overwatch positions, weapons hot. Then silence again. Webb imagined them circling in the darkness, pilots using night vision to watch the compound below, door gunners ready, SEALs moving through the shadows toward their objective. Every second stretched, elastic and terrible. At 0420, the night exploded. Even from the FOB over 100 kilometers away, Webb could hear the distant percussion of flashbangs and breaching charges. The radio erupted with controlled chaos. Breach, breach, breach. Building 1 secure. Contact left side. Hostile down. The professional jargon of violence, each phrase representing life-and-death decisions made in milliseconds. Reeves' voice cut through the chatter. Hawk 3, you've got movement on your 6. Technical with mounted weapon, 500 meters and closing. Hawk 3 copies, engaging. The sound of the minigun was unmistakable even over the radio. A sustained roar like fabric tearing. 60 rounds per second turned into a devastating stream of fire. Hawk 3's door gunner walked the tracers onto the technical, the improvised fighting vehicle erupting in flames as the rounds found the fuel tank. Target destroyed, the gunner reported, scanning for additional threats. Hawk 1, all packages secure. We have 3 precious cargo, ambulatory, moving to extract. Copy, Reeves said. Hawks 2 and 4 move to pick up positions. Hawks 1 and 3 maintain overwatch. It should have been over then. The hostages were rescued, the SEALs were extracting, the mission succeeding with minimal resistance. But warfare has a way of complicating even the best-laid plans. At 0428, new radio traffic. All Hawks, be advised, we have multiple vehicles approaching from the north. Count 5 technicals, estimated 20 to 30 fighters. Al-Shabaab reinforcements, arriving too late to prevent the rescue, but in time to complicate the extraction. Webb listened to the radio traffic intensify, heard the controlled urgency entering voices as the tactical situation deteriorated. The helicopters were vulnerable on the ground-sitting targets for RPGs and heavy machine guns. They needed to get the hostages loaded and get airborne before the reinforcements arrived. But the SEAL team was still 200 meters from the landing zone, moving through difficult terrain. Hawk 1, this is ground. How long can you hold? The SEAL team leader, his voice tight. Reeves didn't hesitate. As long as you need, we're not leaving without you. Advise you've got approximately 90 seconds before those technicals are in effective range. Then you better move faster. A pause, then Reeves again, her voice shifting to a different frequency. Hawk 3, you're with me. We're going to slow those vehicles down. Hawks 2 and 4, get those packages aboard the moment ground arrives. Don't wait for us. What happened next would become the stuff of legend, analyzed in after-action reports and taught in tactical aviation courses. Reeves took Hawk 1 directly toward the approaching reinforcements, flying low and aggressive, her door gunners opening up at maximum range. She wasn't trying to destroy the vehicles, not yet, but to force them to slow down, to button up, to hesitate. It bought precious seconds for the SEAL team to reach the landing zone. Hawk 3 followed Reeves' lead, the two helicopters establishing a defensive line between the reinforcements and the extraction point. The technicals returned fire, heavy machine guns and small arms filling the air with tracers. Webb, listening from 100 kilometers away, heard the impact of rounds hitting Hawk 1's airframe, distinctive pings and cracks that meant the helicopter was taking damage. Hawk 1 taking fire, Reeves reported, her voice still calm. Port side systems showing damage, continuing engagement. Ground is at the LZ, the SEAL team leader called. Loading packages now. Hawks 2 and 4, you're clear for departure, Reeves ordered. Get those hostages out of here. The next 30 seconds were chaos. Hawks 2 and 4 lifted off, their precious cargo secured, heading south at maximum speed. Hawk 1 and Hawk 3 continued their defensive action, their miniguns hammering at the approaching vehicles. Then one of the technicals got lucky. An RPG streaked through the darkness, missing Hawk 3 by meters but close enough that the explosion rocked the helicopter. Hawk 3, we're hit, the pilot called. Lost tail rotor authority, going down. Webb's heart stopped. A helicopter losing its tail rotor was every pilot's nightmare. Without it, the aircraft would spin uncontrollably, the main rotor's torque unopposed. Hawk 3's pilot fought for control, trying to enter auto-rotation, trying to manage a controlled crash rather than a catastrophic one. The helicopter hit hard, skidding across the sandy ground, its rotor blades disintegrating in a shower of fragments. Hawk 3 is down, the pilot reported, his voice shaky but functional. Crew is alive, we're mobile, need immediate extract. Reeves didn't hesitate. Ground, this is Hawk 1, we have a bird down. I'm moving to extract Hawk 3's crew. Negative, Hawk 1. You're damaged and those technicals are still closing. We'll handle the extraction. Ground, with respect, you're loaded with hostages and don't have room for 4 more personnel. I can take Hawk 3's crew. Setting down now. What Reeves did next defied every tactical doctrine and proved why she'd earned the Navy Cross. She brought Hawk 1 down next to the crashed helicopter, fully exposed, taking continuous fire from the approaching reinforcements. Her door gunners kept up a sustained barrage, creating a corridor of suppressive fire while Hawk 3's crew scrambled aboard. It took 45 seconds, an eternity under fire. Rounds punched through Hawk 1's fuselage. The windscreen cracked. A hydraulic line ruptured, spraying fluid across the cockpit. But Reeves held the helicopter steady until all 4 crew members were aboard, crammed into every available space. Then she pulled up, the Seahawk struggling with the additional weight and battle damage, clawing for altitude while the reinforcements converged on their position. All Hawks, this is Hawk 1, Reeves transmitted. We're up and moving, damage assessment in progress, heading south to the FOB. The flight back was a testament to Reeves' skill and determination. Hawk 1 was hemorrhaging hydraulic fluid, flying partially on backup systems. The controls were sluggish, requiring constant compensation. Normal cruising speed was impossible, the damaged airframe couldn't handle it. So Reeves nursed the helicopter south at reduced speed, every mile a victory, every minute aloft, proof of her expertise. Webb watched from the FOB as the sun began to rise, painting the eastern sky in shades of orange and pink. First came Hawks 2 and 4, landing safely with their rescued hostages. Medical teams rushed forward, stretchers ready, though miraculously all 3 aid workers were uninjured. Then, nearly 20 minutes later, Hawk 1 appeared on the horizon, flying lower than the others, slower, trailing a faint mist of hydraulic fluid that caught the morning light. Reeves brought the damaged helicopter in for landing, a perfect touchdown despite the compromised systems. The moment the skids touched Earth, her crew began evacuating 8 people spilling out of an aircraft designed for 4. Emergency response teams swarmed the helicopter, foam cannons ready in case of fire, medics checking everyone for injuries. Webb abandoned his post and ran toward the flight line, drawn by something he couldn't fully articulate: concern, admiration, the need to see for himself that she was okay. He reached Hawk 1 just as Reeves was climbing down from the cockpit, her flight suit soaked with sweat and hydraulic fluid, her face smudged with dirt and exhaustion. She saw him and smiled, tired but triumphant. "Sergeant Webb, told you we'd adapt." Webb wanted to say something profound, something that captured what he'd just witnessed: the courage, the skill, the absolute refusal to leave anyone behind. But all that came out was, "That was the most insane thing I've ever seen, ma'am." Reeves laughed, the sound edged with relief and adrenaline come down. "That's special operations for you. Sometimes insane is just another word for necessary." She looked back at her damaged helicopter, running her hand along the perforated fuselage. "She brought us home. That's all that matters." The debriefing took hours. Every aspect of the mission was dissected, analyzed, documented. The hostage rescue was deemed a complete success. All 3 aid workers recovered safely, no friendly casualties despite the unexpected complications. Hawk 3's crew had minor injuries, nothing serious. Hawk 1 would require extensive repairs, weeks of work to restore full operational capability. But everyone had come home. The SEAL team commander, a wiry man named Preston with 20 years of combat experience, made a point of finding Reeves after the debriefing. Webb was nearby, helping secure the damaged helicopter, but he could hear their conversation. "Captain," Preston said, "what you did out there, that was beyond the call. You could have left us to extract Hawk 3's crew." "Could have," Reeves agreed, "but wouldn't. That's not how we operate." "Still," Preston extended his hand, "thank you for everything. You saved my team's lives and you saved those hostages. That's 2 Navy Crosses worth of heroism in one mission." Reeves shook his hand, looking uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did my job, Commander, same as your team did theirs." After Preston left, Webb approached carefully. Reeves was studying Hawk 1's battle damage, cataloging each bullet hole, each system failure. There was something almost mournful in her expression, the way a rider might look at a beloved horse that had been injured, saving their life. "Ma'am," Webb said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Sure, Sergeant." "How did you stay so calm? On the radio, when everything was falling apart, you sounded like you were ordering coffee, not coordinating a firefight." Reeves considered the question, tracing a finger along a jagged hole in the fuselage. "Panic is contagious, so is calm. If I'd lost my composure, everyone on that radio net would have felt it, and that could have gotten people killed." She looked at him. "Being a leader means being the eye of the storm. Let others see your fear and it amplifies. Show them calm and they can find their own." "Is that what they teach you in flight school?" "No, that's what they teach you in life if you pay attention." She smiled slightly. "I've been scared more times than I can count, Webb. The trick isn't eliminating fear. It's not letting fear eliminate you." Over the next few weeks, as the deployment wound down, Webb found himself reflecting on everything he'd learned. Not just the tactical lessons, but the deeper truths about leadership, courage, and what it meant to serve. Reeves had shown him something fundamental: that real strength wasn't about never breaking, but about bending without shattering, about maintaining your core even when everything around you was chaos. He also noticed how Reeves was treated by other members of the Joint Task Force. The casual respect, the way senior officers sought her opinion, the manner in which even hardened special operators deferred to her judgment. This wasn't just rank. Plenty of captains didn't command this level of regard. This was earned authority, built up through years of competence and courage, through keeping promises and bringing people home. One evening, Webb was sitting with First Sergeant Morrison, watching the sunset paint the Horn of Africa in impossible colors. They'd been talking about the deployment, about lessons learned, about life after the military. Morrison, who was planning to retire after 26 years of service, had been reflective lately, sharing hard-won wisdom with anyone willing to listen. "You know what I've learned, Webb," Morrison said, his voice quiet. "The Marines who make it, who really succeed in this life, they're not the ones who talk the loudest or act the toughest. They're the ones who show up every single day and do the work. The ones who treat everyone with respect, who lead by example instead of intimidation." "Like Captain Reeves," Webb said. Morrison nodded. "Exactly like Captain Reeves. You think she got where she is by being the biggest or the loudest? Hell no. She got there by being undeniably competent, by caring about her people, by doing the right thing even when it was hard." He paused. "That's the kind of leader you should aspire to be." The words settled into Webb's chest, adding to the growing understanding that had been building since that day in the gym. He'd spent years trying to prove himself through aggression and bravado, trying to live up to his brother's legacy through volume rather than substance. But Reeves had shown him a different path, one built on quiet competence, on service without ego, on the understanding that real strength was measured not in how hard you could push others, but in how far you go to protect them. When the deployment ended and Webb's unit returned to Camp Pendleton, he found himself changed in ways both subtle and profound. He was promoted to staff sergeant, made a squad leader, given responsibility for 12 Marines. And he approached that responsibility differently than he would have a year earlier, with patience instead of anger, with mentorship instead of intimidation, with the understanding that his job wasn't to prove how tough he was, but to make his Marines better. He also made a point of attending every joint operations briefing he could, even ones outside his direct area of responsibility. He wanted to learn, to understand the broader military context, to see how different branches and specialties fit together. And at several of those briefings, he saw Captain Reeves, still doing her job with the same quiet excellence that had first humbled him, then inspired him. They didn't interact much, their paths crossed occasionally, a nod of recognition across a crowded room, a brief conversation after a briefing. But Webb carried her lessons with him every day, applied them to his own leadership, tried to be for his Marines what she had been for him, a model of competence, integrity, and grace under pressure. Years passed. Webb made gunnery sergeant, then master sergeant. He did 2 more deployments, led his Marines through firefights and humanitarian missions, through boredom and terror. He lost friends, saved lives, made mistakes, learned from them. The anger that had defined him slowly transformed into something more productive, a drive for excellence, a commitment to service, a determination to honor his brother not through aggression, but through the quality of his work and character. And always in the back of his mind, he carried the memory of that day in the gym when a small woman with storm-gray eyes had shown him more about strength than he'd learned in all his years of combat. Captain Eliza Reeves, Hawk the pilot who'd earned her call sign not through bravado but through unwavering competence, who'd proven that true authority came not from rank or aggression, but from earning respect one mission, one decision, one moment of courage at a time. Webb never became a pilot, never joined special operations, never commanded anything more than a platoon. But he carried Reeves' lessons into every aspect of his service, and in doing so, became the kind of Marine he'd always aspired to be. Not the loudest or the toughest, but someone his people could trust when everything went wrong, someone who showed up every single day and did the work, someone who understood that leadership wasn't about proving yourself, but about empowering others. The last time Webb saw Captain Reeves was at a promotion ceremony at Naval Air Station North Island. She'd made commander, a well-deserved advancement that surprised no one who knew her. Webb attended in his dress blues, standing in the back with other guests, watching as the insignia was pinned to her collar. She looked the same, small, unassuming, the kind of officer you might overlook if you didn't know better. But Webb knew better now. He understood what those storm-gray eyes contained, the steel beneath the quiet exterior, the years of sacrifice and service that had earned her this moment. After the ceremony, they spoke briefly. Reeves seemed surprised to see him, pleasantly so. "Master Sergeant Webb, I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you, ma'am, and congratulations to you," Commander suits you." She smiled. "Does it? I keep expecting someone to realize they made a mistake." The comment was self-deprecating but not self-doubting. She knew her worth, just didn't feel the need to broadcast it. "No mistake," Webb said firmly. "You've earned everything you have, ma'am, more than earned it." They talked for a few more minutes, catching up on the years between, sharing stories about deployments and Marines and the strange, wonderful, terrible life of military service. Then Reeves was called away by other well-wishers, and Webb slipped out, content to have witnessed her success without demanding her attention. As he drove back to Camp Pendleton, watching the California coast slide past his window, Webb thought about how far he'd come since that day in the gym. The anger was gone, replaced by purpose. The need to prove himself had transformed into a desire to serve. And while he'd never thanked her properly, never found words adequate to express what her patience and example had meant, he liked to think his life, his service, his transformation into a better Marine was thanks enough. Because that's what real leaders do. They don't demand gratitude or recognition. They plant seeds and move on, trusting that somewhere, somehow, those seeds will grow into something good. Captain, now Commander Eliza Reeves, had planted seeds in countless Marines, SEALs, sailors, and soldiers. She'd shown them what quiet competence looked like, what grace under pressure meant, what it took to earn respect rather than demand it. And in doing so, she'd changed the military one person at a time, one moment at a time, one act of courage and competence at a time. Not through speeches or policy changes or dramatic gestures, but through the simple, powerful act of showing up every single day and doing the work with integrity, skill, and an unwavering commitment to bringing everyone home. That was her legacy. That was who she was. Not just a decorated officer with impressive credentials and a chest full of ribbons, but a leader who understood that true strength wasn't measured in how hard you could hit, but in how many people you could lift up, how many lives you could touch, how much better you could make the world through quiet, consistent excellence. And somewhere in California, Master Sergeant Marcus, Webb, once an angry young Marine who didn't know who he was talking to, continued that legacy in his own way, leading his Marines with patience and competence, showing them that strength came in many forms, that leadership wasn't about dominance but about service, that the most powerful thing any of them could do was show up, do the work, and take care of each other. It all started with a shove at a squat rack. It ended with a transformation that would ripple through generations of Marines, all because one small woman with storm-gray eyes had the patience to see past anger to potential, the grace to forgive ignorance, and the wisdom to teach through example rather than punishment. "Do you know who I am?" The question had haunted Webb for years. Now he finally understood the answer. She was exactly who she needed to be for herself, for her service, for everyone lucky enough to learn from her. And in helping him discover that truth, she'd helped him become who he needed to be too. Not his brother, not some idealized version of a Marine, just himself at his best, serving with purpose and pride. And that, in the end, was more than enough.